Good morning, Star One.
We can be in service for the day.
Carly Salen and Spencer Lee are not cops. They're just acting like them. Salen is a social worker, and Lee is a paramedic. And together, they're part of an experimental program in Denver called STAR, which sends mental health professionals to respond to 911 calls that just a few weeks ago would have gone to the police.
Star 1, go ahead.
District 6 just asked me to switch over to Channel 2 if you guys needed help with something.
Yeah, we've got a request for you at 4655 Humboldt, National Western, on a party that's not allowed to be on property at the entrance to the building.
Okay, clear.
Let's go do it.
Roll out.
They're responding to a call from a homeless shelter. Vice News agreed not to film their encounter.
So what was this call about?
So we got dispatched to a male party that is unfortunately no longer able to stay here.
Is this the kind of situation where if you guys weren't around, the police might have responded to this?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, the police don't have a lot of options for him either. We've been dispatched to a couple of trespassing calls, and we go there to see if we can find a different solution other than, just jail and, just escorting these people around to different alleys and things like that,
Salen helped get the program started. It's got 6 months to prove it can work.
Is it possible for a typical police officer, to have the level of experience and training that you have?
I mean, in the same way that, not sending me through the academy, the police academy and putting me out on patrol would work out, I would think. The officers have a ton of respect for our education and training, and are happy to kind of default to us when they need to. But I really see the value in this and think it's, one, a huge cost savings, two, more supportive and more appropriate for members of our community, and also, just keeps police doing what they're intended to do instead of all of these other things that have wound up on their plate.
The project is happening at a pivotal moment for policing in America. Since the killing of George Floyd, protesters across the country have been calling for cities to defund the police. To some, that means getting rid of the cops entirely. But to many others, it means finding a way to get the police out of encounters that have become part of their jobs, and probably shouldn't be. Denver's STAR program has been in the works for 2 years, and it's based on a similar one in the small city of Eugene, Oregon, called Cahoots, which for more than 3 decades has been diverting emergencies to specially trained providers. The program has saved the city an estimated $8 million a year, and a lot of headaches. Around 20% of all 911 calls in Eugene are transferred to Cahoots, meaning fewer chances for things to go wrong. Cahoots workers call for police backup less than 1% of the time. That's a big part of what drew the interest of Denver's chief of police, Paul Pazin.
Is it possible that what you'll learn here is that there just are certain things that police have traditionally done that you really just don't need police to do?
That's exactly what we expect to learn. When we're talking about people in need, people in crisis, does it make more sense to have a trained mental health professional in a non-enforcement role help that person? We're seeing a lot of positive steps in that direction.
Is it possible for the police to reform themselves?
I think that the type of structural changes that need to take place, that we do that by working with our community. We need to do better. We need better policing in the future, not no policing. We are not trying to own as many calls for service as possible. We're trying to give away some of that work because we believe that there could be better outcomes.
Pazin has a good reputation, but the Denver PD on the whole doesn't have a lot of trust in the community. During demonstrations last month, police used tear gas and rubber bullets against peaceful protesters. And the STAR program, for now at least, is officially a police project. Campaigners like Vinny Cervantes, who's been involved with the program from the start, would like to see it become totally independent.
Is this defunding the police? Is that what that means?
Right now it's not. But I think ultimately this is a long-term vision of how resources could be used alternatively for different types of programs and service-based responses rather than, criminal justice-based responses. I think long-term this could be a vision of defunding the police. It saves money by virtue of not having nearly the level of response, equipment, and personnel that are responding to a situation. And because, in the worst cases, we're not violating somebody's civil rights by killing them. We've just spent so much time trying to get prosecutors to prosecute officers, which hasn't happened. We spent so much time trying to create changes in the use of force policy and trying to address the power and the influence of the police unions. That's been a long battle that's not even close to even really starting for the most part. I also don't want people to think that this is like something that we can put in front of them and say, don't worry about anything else, or like, don't continue protesting. Like, there's still so much change that needs to happen, including in how the police approached the protest to begin with.
Salen and her colleagues are doing their best to make the program work. And at least for now, she says, it's one that couldn't happen without police support. Would this work without the police being fully invested in this?
I think it would be very difficult. You saw earlier this morning, we were requested by police who showed up on a scene and said, we need a medic and a social worker here. That's the right response.
Do you worry about a situation where you respond to a call and it turns violent?
I've worked in community mental health my entire social work career. I did not have police cover as a case manager going out to motels, making grocery deliveries or delivering medications. You hungry? Granola bars? I'll put them right here for you.
What would success look like? I mean, what are you hoping to have at the end of this pilot period that you can say, look, we did this? Like, what is this?
I mean, I think to me personally, success would be, if you went and asked 10 people downtown, a few of them would say, oh yeah, STAR's great. They really helped me. That's awesome. That would feel like success to me.
What is the STAR pilot program?
We're basically pairing a mental health center of Denver clinician and a Denver health paramedic to respond to non-emergent, low-risk calls coming in through the 911 system that deal with either behavioral health crisis, substance misuse, need for resource connection, really anything that comes in through the system that doesn't require a law enforcement response.
How did this program start?
So it's actually modeled after an incredibly successful program that's been running for about 30 years in Eugene, Oregon called CAHOOTS, Crisis Assistant Helping Out on the Streets. And a delegation from Denver went out a little over a year ago to do a site visit with CAHOOTS. That site visit was very much prompted by community members in Denver saying, hey, we need to take a look at a program like this, and Denver could use something like this. So myself, Rashawn Bliss from Denver Justice Project, Vinny Cervantes from Dasher, representatives from the Denver Police Department, from the 911 Communication Center, went out and hung out for a couple of days and saw what it was all about. And my supervisor, Chris Richardson, and I have been running a co-responder program here in Denver since 2016 that pairs a licensed mental health clinician with the Denver police officer, and really saw this as kind of the second wave version of that program.
This is the next evolution. You're doing it initially with a police officer.
Yeah.
Now you're doing it instead of a police officer.
Well, exactly. I think one of the things that we really realized riding with the police officers were there were a number of calls that we showed up on that really weren't law enforcement centric. The clinician could step in, law officers could step back, and it was really a more appropriate for a clinician to handle. So, let's send the clinicians on their own. And it's a force multiplier for the police department, one, because they're now responding to those emergent risk calls versus, the public health and community stuff. And we're able to take that over. So it keeps everybody kind of in their own lane and doing, what their experience is. I mean, if you look back to kind of deinstitutionalization, back in the 50s and 60s, there really was no community safety net built to accept all the people who were being moved out of those institutions, due to the horrendous conditions. So without those community services in place and community resources, the criminal justice system became the de facto catch-all for people living with behavioral health issues.
Is this defund the police?
It partly is. This is diverting calls away from the police that are more appropriate for other professionals. And the Denver Police Department has been a great partner in that as well, recognizing, hey, these calls don't involve our skill set, and how can we get the right professionals there with the appropriate skills to provide that support and have better outcomes. So yeah, I think this is kind of one small way that the movement can be put into action.
Yeah, of course, a movement that has been around for a while, but
Yes.
really built up steam by chance the same month that you guys were launching.
Yeah, it was kind of a happy coincidence. Like I said, the site visit was over a year ago, and there's been a large community work group that's been working on developing and rolling out this pilot. So we were very close and just kind of thought, well, let's start June 1st.
I mean, you've been working on this for a long time,
Yeah.
and now it's coming here in the aftermath of the protest over George Floyd. I mean, what's that been like?
It's amazing. It's amazing, as someone who obviously upholds social justice and very much supports the movement going on, to really be able to go out into my community and make a difference and respond to community needs. I think as social workers, we're really just vehicles for our community, right? It's not about what we want. It's about hearing what our community wants and making that happen, and it's a dream come true.
But it's also, in a way, you're offering some solution, some tangible solution to something, the sort of feeling that people are clearly expressing on the streets, that the police and what they represent and the role they play has not been working for people. And one answer, of course, is get rid of all cops, abolish the police. Another answer is reform the police.
Right.
But another answer is kind of this middle ground that you guys are doing, which is figure out a way to work with the police to figure out what roles really belong in their hands and what don't.
Exactly, and the Denver police believe in that. Like I said, we've had our co-responder program since 2016, and the Denver police have recognized, hey, we need experts in behavioral health with us to deal with this. So I think that partnership and that buy-in from them has also just catalyzed this pilot and our programs in general.
It requires, though, a pretty significant mindset shift on the part of the police. Obviously, there are, of course, police officers who've always said and complained, we're not social workers, we don't want to be. Mm-hmm. But they have to sort of shift their minds and say, we're not the people who can answer all of these problems.
Right. I have to say, I've seen that mindset very evident in Denver of I'm enforcement, I am criminal justice. And I want to help people in my community, but I also recognize that when I show up and someone is in acute behavioral health crisis, that maybe I'm not the right professional for that job. So I have to say, that's something I've been very impressed with as a Denver transplant, is really that buy-in and that understanding from the top down at the Denver Police Department. I think one thing that Denver police really recognize is that the uniform alone can be a trigger to people, kind of no matter what the officer is doing, right? Depending on people's historical trauma based on their life experience. An officer could show up and be incredibly supportive and be doing all the right things that we want our officers to do. But if someone has bad past experiences with the police, that could escalate it, the uniform alone.
Yeah. Do you hope that this program becomes a model for the rest of the country?
Yeah, we modeled it after Cahoots, right? And our hope would be that someone will see this and want to replicate it as well. We really saw value in the Cahoots program and saw the work that they were doing, and we're incredibly impressed. And I think that's what it's all about, right? If we get more people doing it, and we can just make such a great change and have such a significant impact.
Denver's a much bigger city than
Yes.
Eugene, Oregon.
Yep.
It's a more diverse city.
Yes.
More economically diverse, racially
Yes.
diverse. So there's a lot of challenges that you're probably going to encounter that Eugene didn't have to deal with.
It's going to look different. We can model after Eugene, but I think like all, good programs that model after someone else, you look at what's working really well and what you might have to tweak. And luckily, Cahoots has been an amazing blueprint for us. And they've also just been so helpful answering questions. I can call Ben from Cahoots if I need to and ask him a question, and chats with me. So they've just been great. And they have a big stake, obviously, in seeing this program replicated across the country. I'm sure they're feeling very validated right now after doing this work for 3 decades.
Well, that's what I was going to say, though. In Cahoots, they've done this program for 30 years.
Yeah.
And Denver is the first major city to take it on and try it after 30 years. What does that say?
That we really just need to do whatever Eugene's doing. Let's just look at them and
But why
not wait 30 years.
Why did it take so
right?
long for other cities to look at this model and say, we should also try it?
When I spent a couple days in Eugene, I'm hardly an expert, but what I really noticed was that they see a value in providing support for their community, right? I get the sense that they're a very tight-knit community, and that they might have been a little ahead of the curve in providing for their most vulnerable, while the rest of the country maybe took a little longer to catch up. I just think they're a bit ahead of the game.
So what's next with this program?
Yeah, so we're going to run this pilot for the next 6 to 12 months, get it dialed in really well, figure out how to do this, perfectly, take all the community feedback that we need to, look at our data that we're collecting, and the hope is that this is going to go out to a request for proposal process and roll out citywide.